Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data. In today's video, we're giving you the top NFL quarterbacks based on the 2024 season. We'll be breaking it down in terms of the top five according to our statistical model. We'll also be giving you the 2024 draft class and how we would reevaluate based on our model. We'll be giving you some of the more achieving quarterbacks and some of the more underperforming quarterbacks as well. And then we'll finish it off with a playoff prediction based on the quarterbacks that qualify and their historical data when it comes to the playoffs. So let's get right into it. Okay, so like we touched on in the introduction, we said that we were going to touch on the top five. We are going to kind of give you the five after that too. So we're going to cover the top 10. And coming in at number 10 is going to be Bo Nix. We're going to be touching on him briefly coming in the 2024 draft class segment of the video. So stay tuned for that. So just touching on him real quick. Finished in the top 10. You can see by his numbers. We'll be diving in deeper as the video goes on Bo Nix. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes, this is his, I want to say, first or second season since we've been tracking this since 2018 that he's fallen out of the top five. This year, not the greatest of seasons. You could say it's from the support of his offense and offensive line. You can see 27th, tied for 27th in the league when it comes to giving up pressure to Patrick Mahomes. So he's facing a lot of pressure, almost on every 1/4 of his dropbacks. He's facing pressure. Also, drop percentage. He hasn't had the best wide receivers this season being able to lock onto some of those balls. We've seen this last year throughout some of his numbers, and when he came to playoff time, he was ready to go. He was hoisting another Lombardi. So, as you can tell, some of this matters, some of it does not. But in the regular season, he got to where he needs to be, and that's getting that first round bye. Next is going to be Tua at 8. I thought Tua was pretty good in terms of his completion percentage. Also, some of these bad throws and on target percentage being ranked in the top 5 there. So he's one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. The only thing is him being able to stay healthy, stay on the field, and stay available for his football team. You would like for that to be a little bit better, but when he was there, he did produce. But you would also, I would blame Miami's organization as well. Like you should know, for the last few years, Tua has not been able to play 17 games. The jury's basically out on that he can't stay healthy for a full season. Sometimes that's to no fault of his own, and sometimes it is. But they should be prepared and have a backup necessary for him. Coming in at number 7 is going to be Baker Mayfield. We will touch on him a little bit later. Has been more aggressive throughout this season, as you can tell, because his interception rate is at 2.8. So 2.8% of all of his dropbacks end up in an interception. That's 30th in the NFL, not too great. But looking on the flip side, he does produce because he's second in the NFL when it comes to touchdown percentage. Just like we said, we're going to be touching on him a little bit later. He's going to make one of our lists for either overachievers or underachievers. Moving on next to Jaden Daniels, we're obviously going to touch on him when the draft class portion of the video comes. But as you can see, he is facing a high sack percentage with low pressure rate, which means that some of his scrambles are, they're falling into sacks when they probably shouldn't. But as you can tell from some of his accuracy numbers, some of his on target numbers, he is a top 10 quarterback, almost cracking the top 5 this season. So a good rookie year for Jaden Daniels. Now we're going to move on to our top 5. As you can see, starting with number 5 is going to be Jordan Love. And I think that I got to disagree with the model here. I didn't think that it was one of his best years. You can see from his touchdown percentage, the model really likes that, 6th in the NFL. His completion percentage, 30th in the NFL, not the greatest, but his QBR top 5, adjusted net yards per attempt in the top 5, and then he's low in sack. So he's low in sack number while being pressured, one of the most in the NFL. But as you could see, though, he's not the most accurate of quarterbacks. Tied for 31st when it comes to bad throws, so he throws a lot of bad balls, and he's not always on target, only 73% of his throws. So he hasn't been the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Joe Burrow. Some people may argue it could have been an MVP season for Joe Burrow. I think maybe if he made the playoffs, it would have been more of an argument. Now that he didn't make the playoffs, not much of a case, but that doesn't erase what he did. He had a great season, 4th in terms of the whole NFL and our model. You can see he was top 5 in almost every stat when it came to the first 5 that we look at in terms of completion percentage, touchdown percentage, interception percentage, quarterback rating, and then passer rating. So obviously low in terms of bad balls. You would like to see his on target percentage be a little bit better, but look at what he did this season. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Jared Goff, and this guy's had near perfect football games when it comes to passer rating. So as you can see, second in the NFL in that department, while being second in the NFL in completion percentage, third in the NFL in terms of touchdown percentage. He's been real good. Only thing is when he's forced to throw the ball enough, 21st in the NFL in interception percentage, but you can see he's been one of the most high level producers when it comes to the quarterback position, being third in the NFL, especially in just the net yards per attempt at 8 a pop. That is huge in terms of being able to push the ball downfield and being explosive, especially in that offense. And he's been accurate. So we cover that in a few stats here, and then also on target, we'll solidify that. Coming in at number 2 is Josh Allen. Josh Allen's really cleaned up the turnovers this season for the first time in a long time, probably in the first time ever in his career. Tied for fourth, or excuse me, not tied for fourth, standing alone in fourth in terms of interception rate, interception percentage, and then he's seventh in the NFL in terms of touchdown percentage. But everywhere else in terms of QBR, sack, he's top 5 in the NFL, obviously top 2 here. He could be a little bit better when it comes to his accuracy, as he's tied for 33rd in the NFL when it comes to throwing a bad ball. Coming in at number 1, probably no surprise here, it's going to be Lamar Jackson, as he finishes at number 1 in touchdown percentage, passer rating, QBR, adjusted net yards per attempt. He's number 1 everywhere. He doesn't even have the best of support, as 32nd in the NFL at drop rate for his receivers, so they're not really supporting him like they should be. I will say this is the first time in a long time that someone's finished in the 80% range when it comes to this model. I want to say the other one was Aaron Rodgers in either 2019 or 2020. So he's one of 2 of guys who finish in the 80% win rate according to our model. So this is just saying that if he played on a base football team, meaning base just your average football team, he would average about an 80% win percentage with that base team. So obviously it's almost like a war stat if I was to compare it to anything that people don't understand. Okay, so coming in next is going to be our overperforming quarterbacks. And what we mean by this is just quarterbacks who exceeded expectations. And whose expectations? Well, it's going to be our own expectations. In the beginning of the year, we produced a video that was going to project what the quarterbacks would do this season. And we're basing that on this video. So in the preseason, we had Sam Darnold at about 31st in the NFL. But this season, he ended up being 15th according to this model. So he outperformed by almost 16 spots. And he did so, I want to say, because of the coach. Think of it as the common denominator, right? Kirk Cousins played at a top 5 level last year. Then he got injured. Some people will say top 5 level, according to who? Well, if you watched our video last year, Kirk Cousins finished, as I want to say, in that 5, 6, 7 range, just based on these stats. He leaves, doesn't look good. Sam Darnold's never looked good, goes to Minnesota, now all of a sudden has a coach like Kevin O'Connell who does look like he can coach up offenses and does great with this guy. So jumping up 16 spots, definitely exceeding expectations with Sam Darnold. Next is going to obviously be Jaden Daniels. We had him at about 22nd in the NFL when we took about his college ratings and just some of his similarity traits with other quarterbacks that we have looked at over the years, and we came up with 22nd in the NFL, and that would still be serviceable. Well, he exceeded expectations. 6th in the NFL. That's huge. Jumped up 16 spots just according to our expectations. And look at 6th in terms of completion percentage, 4th in terms of QBR. He's also led his team to game-winning drives, which shows you that clutch gene. That's something that you can't put into a number, is that clutch factor. Next is going to be Baker Mayfield. He's another one. We had him at 29th in terms of the preseason. He's at number 7. He jumped up basically 22 spots from our projections all the way up to that 7th spot. That was huge for Baker Mayfield. He's finishing the season this year at 2nd in terms of touchdown percentage, 4th in terms of quarterback rating, or excuse me, passer rating. And then in terms of his accuracy, 2nd in the NFL when it comes to bad balls. He does not throw a bad ball. Definitely a great year for Baker Mayfield. Now that we touched on some of the guys that exceeded expectations, let's look at some of the guys who had a poor year this season and did not meet expectations. Number 1 on that list will be Anthony Richardson. We had him finishing at about 17th this year, according to our preseason video, while he dropped down to 38. He absolutely dropped off of a cliff, almost 21 spots. He didn't even finish in the top 32 of starting quarterbacks. He was 38th according to this model. And the only thing that he really did out of the 30s, according to all of, comparing him to the 39 qualified quarterbacks, was a sack percentage. He was able to elude sacks with his legs. That's pretty obvious where that came from. Next would be Kirk Cousins. So we touched on it with Sam Darnold looking better. Now Kirk Cousins kind of drops off a cliff, right? Almost like that denominator with Kevin O'Connell. He's been removed from Kirk Cousins, I guess, buddy system, for lack of a better term, and he has not looked good. His interception percentage 35th in the NFL. That is not Kirk Cousins, like if he was in Washington or if he was in Minnesota. 35th in the NFL is not Kirk Cousins football. So he did not meet expectations this season. Next and finally would be Dak Prescott. We had him at number 2 to finish as the second best quarterback. A lot of people push back on us and go, "What are you, crazy?" Well, if you look at him in the last few years, even though he's played it safe, protected the football, and didn't do much in the playoffs, his numbers still remained high in the regular season. He was still finishing in the top 5 for quarterbacks just based on this model. We thought that was going to continue. We were mistaken. He basically dropped 30 spots. He was the 32nd NFL. He would have been the last starting spot just according to this model. And you can see across the board, when you see blue, it is not good. Okay, so let's rank the 2024 quarterback draft class. Uh, Basically, for the guys that are qualified starters, and coming in last is going to be Caleb Williams. And I know some people are going to say, well, his talent, you gave in the beginning of the season, there was so much hype about Caleb Williams. They thought that they had all these weapons in Chicago. It was going to be almost a can't miss thing, and it was a failure. I have to say it was a failure. Coaches got fired. He didn't perform. He performed nowhere in any of these stats across the board except for protecting the football. And that's the only thing that you can hang your hat on. I think if you're a Chicago fan, you're really going to need a coach that can work well with Caleb, because I just think that one of the things that was overlooked, and we touched on this in our draft video when we ranked these guys before they were even drafted. We said that Caleb's going to have a hard time with escapability in the NFL. He could get away with it at the college level, but being able to translate that into the NFL, you can see 37th in the NFL when it comes to sack percentage. The escapability did not translate well to the NFL. Coming in next is going to be Drake May. Drake May, I want to say this season, I want to say it's a tad bit overrated. People are like, he's got the juice. This is the guy. Yeah, we kind of knew that going in, or at least if you watched our video when he was coming out of the draft, we said that if all these quarterbacks play at their ceiling, this guy may be the top one out of them, that he may have the best ceiling. His chances of getting to that ceiling may be a little difficult, but if he hits his ceiling with the talent that he has, the arm talent, the escapability, being able to escape the pocket, being able to climb up into the pocket and make those throws, he could have the highest ceiling of all these quarterbacks. I will say though, the one knock on him, he's had opportunities in some of these games to either tie games or go ahead and win them. He hasn't done that. I don't know if I can blame him or I blame that smelly team that he's on, and maybe start blaming him if that seems to be consistent when he does get better talent. But it's something to look out for. It's something to put a bookmark in. Next is going to be Bo Nix. I think that he's been very serviceable. And I think that right now is his ceiling, believe it or not. I don't think he's going to get any better than this. I think that he's done well under Sean Payton and he's very well coached. And this is what he's going to be very reminiscent of this in his career. Being a top 10 quarterback every year is a high ask for a guy like Bo Nix. I think he's more in that 15 area. He did have a good season. Denver fans might say he can build on it. I think that this is his ceiling. That's just my hot take, whatever. Michael Penix is not going to make this illustration, and that's where I would have him next. I think that as the years go on, I think Drake may hop over Bo Nix. But right now, Michael Penix has really caught my eye with some of these balls that he has thrown. Also, his own balls as well, dragging them across the carpet on some of these throws. That game tire against Washington, the game tying touchdown against Washington, huge balls on him to make that throw. Pinpointed it right down the middle, right down the hash. It was a great throw. It was a great throw. He's had a number of great throws. So Michael Penix is not here, but just touching on him, he has looked pretty good. I'd have him at number 2 as of right now. But number 1 obviously is Jaden Daniels. He's 6th in the NFL if you compare him to every quarterback or the qualifying 39 that we touched on. He is basically top 6 when it comes to completion percentage, top 10 when it comes to touchdown percentage. Could do a little bit better in that interception rate. He does take a lot of sacks, and we touched on this a little bit earlier. He doesn't get pressured a lot, and him taking those sacks kind of says that he gets into um, some bad situations on his own. So if he can fix that as his career goes on, you're going to see a great quarterback in the making. Okay, so now moving on to the quarterback playoff projection segment of this video. What we basically did is we took all the historical data from these quarterbacks that made the playoffs and we put them into our model. And remember, it gives us the win percentage based on a base football team. Well, that's exactly what you're looking at here. Now, some of you guys may ask, what about rookie quarterbacks and what about a guy like Sam Darnold, who it's his first time making it to the playoffs? For those projections, what we did is we took their regular season numbers, and then we have calculated a formula that shows the drop off from regular season production to playoff production. And I know some of you people may say, well, this guy plays better in the playoffs than the regular season. On average, in the last 20 years, quarterbacks play drops off come playoff time on average on all the quarterbacks. So if you're talking about Patrick Mahomes playing better in the playoffs than in the regular season, that's one guy out of the last 20 years. Good for you. We're talking about on average. So what you're looking at is the win percentage rate. So we showed you that in the past illustration. Basically, Josh Allen, a better quarterback in the playoffs than Bo Nix. We're not saying it's 56 versus 49. We're saying that is his number. That's basically his war versus Bo Nix's war. So don't try to add it up to 100 or anything like that. So that would mean Josh Allen would move on to the second round, or the Buffalo Bills would move on to the second round. Next would be the Lamar Jackson at 24% win rate. That's right. His playoff numbers fall off of a cliff. They are abysmal. Lamar in the playoffs is so different from the regular season that Russell Wilson, based on his success in the playoffs, has been a little bit better, thus him moving on to the second round. Next would be CJ Stroud. Remember, we mentioned very small sample size here from CJ, only a couple of games, but he's looked great in those games, and that's what pushed him over the top. Remember, that number will come down as his career goes on, but right now we have to base it on how well he's played in these playoff football games. It's been two, and he's been great, so he moves on instead of Justin Herbert. Jordan Love has been one of the best quarterbacks in terms of the guys remaining here, especially throwing like 75 touchdowns against Dallas last season in his playoff game. So just based on his small sample size of 2 games, it looks like a little bit of an outperformance compared to Jalen Hurts. So he would be moving on. Next was a tie. It wasn't necessarily a tie. It was 53% for Baker Mayfield and 52.5 for Jaden Daniels. So Baker gets a slight nod there. But Baker, some of his early games in his career in the playoffs weren't too great, but as of late, with weapons, with Odell Beckham in Cleveland and then Mike Evans in Tampa, he's really lit it up. Next is going to be the matchup between the Rams and the Minnesota Vikings. You can see Stafford 55 in terms of his historical playoff numbers, whereas Sam Darnold's coming in at 41 in terms of the win percentage or the win rate. We would have a divisional round of Patrick Mahomes defeating Russell Wilson, obviously. And remember, we're just handicapping quarterbacks. We're not necessarily saying that the Chiefs are going to beat the Steelers or that the Steelers are going to beat the Ravens. We're just saying if you're comparing it based off playoff history for these guys, Patrick Mahomes gets the nod instead of Russell Wilson. Josh Allen would actually fall to CJ Stroud. Remember, CJ Stroud only 2 game sample size. So you could probably expect that he would fall back as his career goes on, just based on the law of averages. Next, Jared Goff would fall to Jordan Love. Jared Goff, another sneaky guy where his production really drops off compared to the regular season come playoff time. So Jordan Love would move on there. And then Baker would fall just a few points below Matt Stafford, having Matt Stafford move on. Then you would have the AFC Championship. We have Stroud over Mahomes, Love over Stafford, giving us a Super Bowl of Love over Stroud. So remember, 2 guys with very small sample size, they have a real good chance of falling back to earth, especially this season. I think they're both the underdog just in the first round alone. So just remember, we're just handicapping quarterbacks based on the historical playoff performance. So I don't want anybody to lose their shit because they're not seeing it. And then they come back here and say, oh, you guys picked this. We didn't pick nothing. We're just showing you historical playoff data. We're really emphasizing the point between the drop off of Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson come playoff time. It's really eye opening to look at those numbers and say, wow, there's a huge drop off for these guys when you compare the regular season numbers to their playoff numbers. Like always, if you guys liked what you saw, make sure to hit that subscribe button and also that like button as well. Make sure to share and comment down below on maybe your top quarterbacks this season, who overperformed, who underperformed, and also how you would draft the rookie class in that 2024 season. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.